Alright guys, such coming again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. The drama continues going into the final day of the first weekend of 2026's Major 1 qualifiers, and we have some serious drama to get into. The NPC getting banned, some new weapons coming into play, the Razor 9mm even having an appearance last night, major questions on gentlemen's agreements and how they might need to change, Octane among others calling out the pro players, but also this whole process got leaked over the last day or so. Apparently OpTic and Thieves, by the time it came to them voting in this drama, their votes weren't even relevant anymore, but Lqgend says actually no, LA Thieves were one of the culprits. They are just trying to save face. Lots to get into today. Very much on Twitter, your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. We're going to start here really with Mack absolutely frying in this first map. Mack, when he's on point, is always sensational to watch, and we saw it in this series. I mean, these first three maps between Cloud9 and Gentlemates yesterday were about as close as it comes. It was a 252-49 hardpoints. Look, Cloud9 could have 3-0'd this series. It was that wild. They will feel like they should have won the game one. The second map was, I mean, an absolute barnstormer, and then Beans popped an ace in the final round of Search and Destroy with this pretty disgusting two-piece with the sniper. Beans has always been one of the best snipers in the league ever since he was using it back in, Modern Warfare 2 especially. He was pretty notable on that Boston team. This was a great moment. And then they went on to win the Overload as well. They went up 3-0 and then 5-1 in the Overload. Paris brought it back to a 5-4, but it didn't matter in the end. So Cloud9 go up 2-1 in the series, and it's been a pretty good weekend so far for the lower teams in theory, right? Surge getting their win. We'll talk about some drama with that with Boston in a second. Cloud9 weren't far away from getting a win here against Gentlemate, undoubtedly one of the best teams in the game. With Sim, obviously Ravens get their win on the board as well. So it appears that some of the teams that we, were expecting to be lower down the league, which of course is still true, are doing better than maybe expected. I do like this Cloud9 team. I'm not surprised to see them getting what was a pretty solid result here. But unfortunately, when it mattered, Gentlemates just turned up a gear. Map 4, Map 5 weren't particularly competitive. And C9 lose another Game 5. So pretty brutal, really. They're doing a good job getting to Game 5s, even against quality opposition. But actually closing out, that's proving to be a difficulty. So that's going to be the key deciding factor for Cloud9 going forwards. But Afro had some takeover moments. Beans had some takeover moments. So did Mack. Vivid, obviously, is always a key piece of these kind of, if you drop Vivid, you know what happens, right? So we've seen that a million times before. These were the final numbers of the series. If I just zoom out real quick, C9 go down 3-2. Ghosty, though, again, was the star of the show here. It's kind of wild because the first couple of maps he was okay, but nothing crazy. And then map 4, 33 and 23 takeover. Map 5, 9 and 2 takeover. So he's done it again. I mean, is he the best player in the game right now? He's certainly not far away from it. It's difficult to argue otherwise. He's been on smoke so far this game, and it's, wild to look at. Obviously, Thieves play tonight against Toronto. That's going to be a real interesting series. The fact that there's talk about Thieves dropping Kenny for potentially Neum, it's not been long since they dropped Ghosty for Kenny, right? So I think that's going to be one of the key dramas. Now, Purj was not very happy with BenJ Nassim. Now, the reason because of this was, okay, Boston lost. They got reverse swept by Surge. Now, however you slice it, that ain't a good result, right? Like, going up 2-0 to get reverse swept by Surge is pretty brutal. Had Boston closed it out with a 3-0, Purj wouldn't be talking about this. And it's also the classic when, look, the other co-hosts were also saying, damn, Boston, they got cooked. That was pretty bad, right? They need to play better in all this. BenJ's the one who gets it in the neck because he's not been a pro, right? And I understand that, but it is what it is. Purj says, we are by far the most under-practiced team. My teammate just got in the country 2 days ago because of visa issues. I think this might have been Snoopy, which is, of course, very unfortunate, right? Like, I'm not going to take that away from the fact that, yes, Boston, if they didn't get the practice in that other teams have had over these last couple of weeks because of visa stuff, that's highly unfortunate. Obviously, it's going to have affected their preparation, right? So, I'm not going to take that away. But it was interesting. When we are frying, please don't dries. Ben, you are ... We haven't been out of practice because of visa issues. My teammate got it. So, obviously he's roasting BenJ. Look, we'll see, right? Because, as I say, if they'd have closed out that series with a 3-0, they nearly won the overloads, then we wouldn't be talking about this, but we are. And we'll see if Boston can turn it around, right, with another weekend of practice, absolutely. Now, this is another interesting roster development. QK4B, QK, whatever you want to describe him as. He's been cooking lately on Asim's Falcons Academy roster. he's been the star of the show over there, really. And for the last, I don't know, few weeks, few Challengers Cups and Elites, he has been turning some serious heads. And I think even the OpTic guys a while ago said that they played him last year sometime in like an 8 series, or they scrimmed him or whatever, and he was absolutely frying. So this kid's one to watch. Clay reveals, I'll share these clips with you guys in a second, that actually QK has interest from a top team. Now, Clay says there is a top 4 team interested. Now, a couple of seasons ago, the top 4 was clear, right? It was OpTic, it was FaZe, it was New York at times, and it was Toronto, basically. Like, a couple of years ago, those were the top 4. Thieves have been a little bit hit or miss, but, you know, let's say Modern Warfare 3 or whatever, those were the teams pretty much winning the event. Now, things have changed. What is a top 4 team nowadays? Okay, it's an OpTic, it's Gentlemates, right, on the screen here. It's FaZe, clearly, and then, what, Thieves or Toronto, right? Who's the top 4 team? In fact, we might get the answer to that tonight, but for the last couple of years, when you say top 4 team, it's pretty obvious what you mean. Whereas this season, it seems a little bit harder to say. So Clay says, though, that a top 4 team is interested, at least from a substitute perspective, but there's also other teams also interested from a just straight up potentially signing him as a player perspective. Now, Falcons did say they would look to do a loan arrangement here, so they would loan, as other teams have done, loan QK out potentially to another team so he could be a starting player or something like that. But those negotiations are ongoing. But the other drama to share is on the NPC. So yesterday we saw Shotzzy use the NPC, maybe he shouldn't have done, but who knows if that's changed the narrative on it getting banned. The reality is the NPC, effectively the MSMC of this game, is a viable weapon, but not all the time and not on every occasion. And I think most of the fans are on board with having another weapon in the meta because it's actually a proper SMG, I would argue, unlike the Drazah. Now, Octane did a little bit of digging, and he decided that he would go and try and find out which teams actually voted this in. Because the way that it works, I mean, it shouldn't work like this, but they've got a group chat, they've got the admins in the group chat, and they've got each team as a representative. Now, the teams vote, and if it gets to 9 out of the 12 teams voted in favour of one thing, then it's gone, right? So the logic here is that, well, Falcons voted for it to be in. They've said that. They've been explicit about that. Apparently, Gentlemate and Ravens both voted it out. That's like a known thing. Now, and Thieves and OpTic, they didn't vote in it, right? So now this sometimes happens, again, the process here is atrocious, right? Because they're like, all right, we're going to have a vote on the NPC, and people just type their votes in the chat. And then what will often happen is maybe someone from OpTic will not even have looked at it. Maybe they will. Really, they should do it like, okay, at this time, this date, we're going to do a vote. If they were doing it properly, they'd have some sort of like Google form or something, right, that they could actually fill in so you didn't know the other team's votes. I think it's just outrageous. They just type it into a group chat, and then the teams, maybe Dashy loads up the chat and is like, oh, well, damn, we've seen 6 teams have already voted for it to be gone, so it's looking like it's going to go then, right? So let me not even bother voting, or like that's just how it tends to be. You see all the other teams voting for it, you tend to go on board. If it was anonymous, I think it would be you might get a different picture with this. But no one's really thinking in these terms. They're just trying to keep things as dulled down as possible. But Octane found out what was going on. Now, of course, if it's true that OpTic and Thieves didn't vote in it, as in by the time they came to vote, there was already 9 teams for a supermajority, then it would mean that all these other teams also voted for it to be gone, which is what Octane is calling out here, right? Because Octane's basically saying, look, whatever you think about whether the NPC should be in or not, we know that the teams vote based on their personal interest. And even on that front, they've got it wrong, because the NPC at least gives some sort of different spice, some sort of different variability in the meta that these teams that are weaker could use. They know that they're bad in the current meta with respect to some of the absolute top dogs. So why not switch it up, I think is Octane's argument. BenJ goes off on these guys as well, says that they're crybabies about it. Clay says, look, we definitely voted in, but it wasn't enough in the end.
Is he going to have the same issue once he goes to the league, though?
Tell him that he's already the best, and we need to see him to be the best.
That's kind of tough.
I mean,
dude, we've already been talking to some teams, bro.
Really?
Yeah. Some teams have been calling.
Can you give me a primary color of one of their teams?
I mean, a top 4 team has called us about him. Maybe not for a starting spot, but for at least a join
That's Toronto for sure.
Yeah, that's a good shot. Toronto's doing that.
I mean, a couple. There's been some combos, and we've.
Sorry,
I just don't see a world in which these teams should be trying to keep the game as simple as possible. Like, what incentives, again, not with regard to Toronto and FaZe. Honestly, yeah, no, fuck these two. Fuck these guys too. Both of them. Fuck all these teams. Why would we, if we're these three teams right here, honestly, if we're these teams here, because Miami just lost to Carolina, so fuck them. Why are we GAing the gun? What incentive do you have to try to make the game more straightforward for these teams up here, brother? Because respectfully, they're better than you. They're way better than you. Like, why are you trying to dumb the game down and use the least amount of variance possible to try to get... Bro, you are ass. Like, why are we trying to get rid of the gun that's going to probably help you be better?
Like, it's not going to get better until the pros want to take control of their situation, and they don't want to do that. They'd much rather just be fucking crybabies about it. And this is just going to continue to happen year after year after year after year after year. It's just not, guys, it's not going to change. The pros sometimes don't, I'm not saying they don't know what they're talking about, but like, they live in Delulu sometimes, bro. Like, okay, I understand if the gun 3 bullets, but at 3 bullets at like 10 meters, okay? Yes, there are 2 maps where there are a bunch of gunfights that are 10 meters. There's also a lot of gunfights on those maps that are longer than 10 meters, okay? It's not like you're taking an NPC at P3 when you're coming from P2 to try and gun some guy on the fucking heady, okay? It's just not gonna happen. Like, that's my thing. It's just, they're not believable when it comes to this shit. And they're not objective. They don't all have the same value structure on what they want from the game. And we just get shit like this to happen.
You know what's going on with the GA and what's happening and why they did it?
I mean, I have some of the logic that I've heard, but I mean, it's the same as always. The logic sucks, and there's no argument for the players to stand on.
They saw Skies get a 2-piece, man. That's why. They saw Skies get a 2-piece to win a game. They said, yeah, get that shit out of here.
I don't know, man. The players just prefer to have a sub in the game that can do literally everything than a sub in the game that's only good at what subs should be good at. So, I mean, with that being said, I mean, I think they're all idiots, personally. I think the entire pro scene that we have nowadays are just full of huge pussies, and they don't want to use their brains in any capacity other than just spawning in and shooting their gun straight. I mean, I had like a 30-minute rant today on stream about it. It's just the entire pro ecosystem of Call of Duty is filled with like just self-fulfilling fucking losers.
Whoa, that shit hurt me.
Damn.
It is what it is, bro.
One of the dramas, though, got exposed by Celium because it looks like Thieves weren't voting, and that was at least what was found out. But then the tune changed a little bit because Celium said, no, they did vote out. They're just trying to effectively, you know, save face, or maybe they didn't have time or whatever. They just forgot about it. Who knows? But effectively, Celium says, no, Thieves were also keen for it to be gone, which was counter, seemingly, to what Celium and the guys at the Falcons wanted. But it didn't matter at the end of the day. The NPC was still dusted. Apart from the fact that we saw it yesterday again, right? Shotzzy was using against FaZe. They agreed for their series they were going to use it regardless. We'll see, because we also had yesterday in that series, Beans pulled out a Razor 9mm in the map 4. It wasn't working that well for him, but it was at least another possible option in the game that could be used, right? If the NPC's getting banned, are there other viable alternatives to the Dravik on certain hills, certain maps? Quite possibly, yes. But anyway, I think these guys are pretty much bang on the money with regard to all of this stuff. aBeZy, of course, also gave his thoughts on the OpTic loss. There'll be no surprises there. But let's talk about what we've got going on this evening. So Ghosty, after that victory against Cloud9, he's now got a 1.35 KD this stage. He's still got a handful of matches to go, so it might not stay that high. Many of these stages here were just 5 series stages, so it's easier to maintain this high of a KD. Maybe difficult to do so over 7 series. But Ghosty is sitting at a 1.35. The record remains Zinni, Vanguard Stage 2, Simp, Cell, Octane not far away. Thought it was a pretty remarkable stat here that Octane had a 1.32 very shortly before his retirement, of course, and at that point was on a 10 tournament streak of a 1 or more KD. And yeah, Octane says, I'm him, bro, what can I say? But of course, he decided to step away very shortly after that and hasn't come back since. Before we talk about the matches for tonight, OpTic did confirm when the ring ceremony is going to be. Of course, they won the World Championship again last year. There's a fair bit of talk about, or maybe this year the three-peat's going to hit different after what aBeZy was saying last night. But as OpTic say, adding to the legacy, Saturday, January the 31st. So that's when they're going to do the ring ceremony on the Saturday before everything gets underway, I would imagine. These then are the 3 games of today. So Ravens are in action again after a big result the other day. They have now obviously considered to be a little bit better of a chance against G2. How will they get on again with Exceeds? I think they could easily win that series, but G2 are probably still marginal favourites. OpTic, of course, will be favourites here to take down the Surge, but they need to get a bit of revenge, right? I mean, Surge just got a reverse sweep against Boston yesterday. OpTic, they need to get another win on the board, at least gain a bit of momentum back in their favour. I think they will do that against Surge. I don't think it will be super easy, but if OpTic win this series very comfortably, I'll be pretty impressed. But really, the series to watch is the final one, right? Between those 2 teams that we're not sure who's a top 4 team and who's not. We might get the answers tonight. Thieves versus Toronto. This could very much go either way. Again, with Thieves and Kenny being under some pressure from the sub bench, not like the sub bench is even there anymore for Neum, like, because he's not actually on the sub bench, but they've got this option to sign him if they want to in the next month. Kenny is under a similar level of pressure to what we have seen with Drazah and Abuzah. So will Kenny deliver? That is probably the key story of the day. So hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.